So Brad, tell me a little bit about yourself as a coach.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me too. Really happy to to see you. And I'm a mental wellness and performance coach for entrepreneurs and conscious leaders. And what does that look like? Really, I help bridge the world between mental well-being, wellness, and actual business acumen and performance in a neat little bundle. So I'm happy to break that down, but in essence, that's what I do for a living. Yeah.
So what's that neat little bundle have inside?
Yeah, good question. So I've, without getting into the specific offers that I look at, the essence of my work is helping conscious leaders and people who are high achievers or very successful step into who they really are. A lot of people have been chasing their whole life for something. It could be money, it could be status, it could be results, whatever it is. And often this comes from a bit of a frenetic drive in the nervous system to get somewhere different than where they are. And during this process, it's easy to lose sight of things like our inner voice, our intuition, our felt sense of our own experience. People work from pressure, not peace. My work helps them go literally from the hustle to the harmony. And when you step into who you are and you move in the world that way, well, you still get results. It's just calibrated and you're clear because you're connected. So it's about helping people really own who they are, find the harmony, and still drive towards, a vision and purpose that's more meaningful and aligned with who they actually are.
So how does a person even get into that?
I don't have a good answer to that in terms of like a strategic way, because my entire career in some senses, to be honest, has been a bit of an accident. And let me break that down for you. I was in the sort of wellness, well-being, mental health space long before I was in the space of providing business training and coaching for the people that I work with. Because I had so many of my own things to work on and things I needed to sort out in my own life that was very, very prescient and relevant. And so I had to do a lot of what we would call mindfulness and mind-body work, because I'm happy to tell the story later what really got me into it to fix my own stuff. But long story short, I was doing very conventional leadership business training. And I had clients, and the old school topical stuff, mostly from the mind and those frameworks, wasn't really getting at a lot of the core issues that I found that people were facing. And we could talk about some strategy, or we could talk about some hacks, or we could talk about some growth methodologies, and it was just scratching the surface. And based on my own experience in the wellness field and with yoga and different Zen masters and stuff that I'd worked at through the years, I was feeling into something larger that really needed to happen for them. And it's a place that they needed to learn to step into, right? And what I did is slowly started to bring in the aspects of what I was learning in the mental well-being field, the wellness field, the holistic field, into this training. And it was very, very effective. And then it just went from there. So
from hustle to harmony, what does that even mean?
Again, I'm going to pose this as a story / a question, because there's a lot of words I could put to this, but I'll ask you, have you had those points in your life when you connect with something deeper and you're just so clear that that's the next thing to do and you step into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there isn't a lot of resistance to it, is there? At least in the moment of that discovery, right?
Yeah.
And it feels very clear because it's your embodied truth coming forward into an action. And there's an effortlessness to it. There's an ease to it. Doesn't mean that, fears don't arise in the process of it and anxieties, and we don't end up coming up against ourselves. But from that place where we're really connected, there's an ease to it, right? It's like, of course I'm going to do this because it's me, right? I'm not doing it for the sake of doing it. I'm doing it because it's an expression of who I actually am. That's harmony. Doesn't mean you're not working and you're sitting around like monks all day, although that's a cool thing to do, right? There's actually some intent, a deeper purpose that comes out of you that you can transfer into the material world, into the things that you create, the relationships that you have. And so that's what harmony can look like. It's like, am I connected? And when we are, we realize, well, I'm exactly where I need to be, doing what I need to do because that's who I am. So we've all had those experiences, and anybody watching will resonate with that because everyone's had their own experience of coming into being, coming into themselves. And for most people, they're pretty rare, right? It can be these once every 5, 6, 10 years where they pivot in their lives. And what I help people do, long story short, is access that more consistently and more readily in the day-to-day. So it's a place that you're coming from, which creates your life. Yeah. And then, hustle, there's a tension to it. I got to get something done. I got to get something done. I got to get something done, whatever. We can literally feel the tension in our body as we strive towards something that's over there. It's out there. Harmony, man, it's like, it's okay. We can relax into our experience, and there's a fundamental stillness and okay with it. And when we get there, it's like, I'm still going to work. I'm still going to get things done. I still have to propel my life forward, but there isn't that neurotic tension to it anymore. Yeah, so it takes the pressure away. And then we can come into our lives from a place of presence. And that, my friend, is a really, really nice place to be. So yeah, I hope that explains that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to inject my own story into that, when I was leaving my career in oil and gas, I had the major catalyst in my life. And it was just a time and opportunity to let go of who I used to be and to step into who I am now and who I had been ready to become.
Yeah.
And although it was a difficult time in my life, I had gone through a breakup, I was selling everything that I owned and moving across the world, there was just such clarity of the direction that I needed to go and who I needed to become along the way.
Yeah. And, often in my experience too, discoherence, in a sense, is the catalyst for these kind of steps forward, because we have to shed a lot of the ideas of who we thought we were and what our life was. And that's happened to me several times. And we have to pick up the pieces somehow. And it's a really good opportunity to draw from that truth that's always been there and always will be. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like, that's a really good opportunity when shit hits the fan, to look at the pieces, inspect the pieces, realize what fell apart. But when we put it back together, it can come from that deeper place. So I'm glad you shared that, because a lot of people can relate to that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that people chasing success typically get wrong that keeps them stuck?
That success is somewhere over there. This is very cliche, and I'm not talking conceptually. I'm talking this is an embodied experience of fully accepting our conditions in our life the way they are. And people confuse that with complacency or lack of effort or even lack of ambition, but it isn't. When we step in and accept the conditions of our lives as we are through a process of the body, it's really a process of kind of becoming and arriving with our life. There's a stillness to it that comes, and we can discern then from a better place which parts of us are driving success through that sort of, that tense lens, that bit of a neurotic lens that comes from fear and survival. And we'll call that instinct, and intuition, which is, I feel like I need to step this way. I feel like I need to make that decision. So again, I think those two probably, which is the idea that our completeness is somewhere over there, and coupled with that, the idea that when we're present and still and fully accept things, that somehow makes us not ambitious or not purpose-driven, or it takes our drive away. And in my experience, it couldn't be further from the truth, because it just allows us to step into who we really are. And there's energy there, there's vibrancy, there's opportunity, there's joy. And so, yeah, that's it. I would say those two. Yeah.
Something that I'm working on in my own life is this definition of wholeness. And I keep expanding this definition. What that specifically looks like for me in this moment is getting the highest achieving parts of myself to accept the parts of myself that I had tried to change.
You and I talk about this because we're friends, so full disclosure, we're friends, but
I hang out with him sometimes.
Sorry about that. That's the thing that I think it's a really interesting paradigm to look at, because if we look at our industries, for example, this is a great example. It's people are trying to work to better the conditions of their life by looking at the way their habits and their thoughts and their processes create the experience that they have.
Yeah.
Long story short. And there's utility to that. I'm not knocking that entirely at all. However, there's also a bit of a tension sometimes when we always feel like there's a part of us that needs correction or modification or fixing. This wholeness concept, the way I've learned to really feel it and understand it, is that fundamentally, we're okay. I'm not here to fix you, bro. I'm not even here to fix me. I'm here to help you find your truth. Yeah. And that's a really different place to operate from, because there's this like range, this awareness that holds it, where we can accept what's ever coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that doesn't mean that we don't try to refine ourselves and become better people.
So we've got the accepting part of being whole. What's the work side of being whole?
Yeah, this is the other thing. I mean, I feel great about this topic, and you know, I'm 36 years old, and the majority of my life has not been this condition.
Yeah.
Okay. There's been a lot of chaos, a lot of insecurity. You know, I've train wrecked my life a couple times. This is for me, it's been very much a hard-earned, it's a practice, okay? And what I think we have to do is we have to acknowledge that we need to start to turn into and hold the fires of the stuff that we don't accept, because it's painful.
Yeah.
We can call it shadow, we can call it suppressed stuff, we can call it inner child. There's an element of embracing the parts of us that aren't fully integrated and we don't fully accept, that is inherently painful, which requires work.
Yeah.
Literally holding the fire. Yeah. And that's not easy. There's absolutely nothing easy about it, because not only do we have to examine the truths about ourselves that we don't want to, you know what I mean? Also, we have to learn to accept them and integrate them and hold them. Because if we're not holding them, they're holding us, and we proceed in our lives from ignorance. Yeah. And it's a painful process. And you know, there's multiple ways to do this. We have mentors, we go to retreats, we have coaches. Relationships are a wonderful way to do it, because it pokes at the fabric of our being.
Yeah.
And if we aren't able to hold that in awareness, if we're not able to touch the flame, then those cycles continue, right? People are going to have toxic relationships sometimes the whole life, because they're not looking at the parts of themselves that are actually creating their experience from the body or the unconscious. So it's inherently really difficult. And I don't want to underscore or dismiss the fact that it's all glorious, because it isn't. And anybody watching who's gone through deep growth understands the challenge. And I've had many, you know what I mean? And so it's not all sunshines and rainbows. But, you know, the inevitable outcome of that is this clarity that comes, you know what I mean? This acceptance. Like, even speaking about it, I get excited.
Right.
Because it's true. It becomes a lived experience, which I think is very special, but we have to go through the pain, at least in my experience. We have to look at those parts, and we're always going to be refining ourselves the rest of our life, but sometimes it's the way we learn to refine ourselves too. And we keep working against ourselves so much when we step into that place of acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me as a person, just for context, so everybody in the audience knows, Brad and I met a year ago in Cambodia.
Yeah, a bit over a year ago. Yeah.
And that was when I was first starting to take life coaching courses. I was starting to coach friends, stuff like that. And that's when I was transitioning out of oil and gas into coaching, right, after traveling. And for me, I had been doing personal development for a number of years at that point. And being put in that environment was one of the most difficult things I had been through in a very long time. And I was forced to face everything I had ever tried to change about myself. All those patterns, all those habits came back up. And the question that I needed to ask myself on a regular basis was, can I love this version of myself too?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the key. And I think sometimes there's some nuance to that, and I think there's the really open yin-oriented approach where we love it and we nurture it and we look at the inner child, and I'm totally for that stuff. But there's also the more yang orientation, which is we have to own it. Yeah. That takes a lot of courage and strength. You know, loving it is one thing and accepting it, but then owning it is recognizing it's a part of our fabric.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a part of our being, and we have to be aware of it consistently, because we get in the right environment, in the right relationship with the right people, and it can come to the surface again. So it's something to monitor too. So ownership requires a bit more responsibility over those parts too. And you're right, I mean, environment's a great way to do it. Because we can't anticipate, you know, the next minute from now, the next day from now, the next week. It's always an unrolling, interesting process. But when we learn to hold things as they arise in that way, it becomes quite powerful in that sense, because then we own it, and then again, it doesn't own us. Yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And what that looked like for me, everyone's journey is different.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But what that looked like for me was, as these patterns and habits and tendencies came up, it was, do I indulge in this behavior or do I not? Yeah. And if I do, what do I still need to learn from this? If I need to have that experience, okay.
Sure.
What do I need to learn from? So it's coming from a place of awareness instead of a place of, self-destruction or toxicity. It's such a strange paradigm because it's this massive state of allowing while pushing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to describe it better than that, and you're just going to have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. And I feel you on that. This is my experience of it too. There's a larger space of awareness that holds that.
Yeah.
And it's like in Zen we say we don't run towards and we don't turn away either.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't run towards. That's compulsion and maybe addiction or just habit. Yeah. But we also don't turn away. And we don't want to turn away from the expression of who we are completely because then it gets suppressed, right? Yeah. And so a lot of times with the clients and people that I work with, they've turned away from a lot and towards a lot. Yeah. And we want to get them back to, turning into who they are, turning into their actual experience, turning into their intuition, turning into their real inner gifts. Yeah. And slowly, in a sense, turning away from the stuff that used to serve them and isn't. Ultimately, again, when you get to that place that you're talking about, I'm just using the same language framework, is we don't want to do either. Right. We just want to allow. We don't want to turn away or towards. But that takes some refinement and some skill and some discernment. Initially, it's like, how do we get back to that place where we can actually make those discerning decisions? Yeah. That's a completely different process, right? So, I agree with you. And we need data. We just can't do this alone. Yeah. We need data, we need friends, we need relationships, we need mentors, we need experience. We don't live in a vacuum. Yeah. We're social creatures, and our interbeing is that alone. It's an interbeing. And the world around us informs us just as we inform the world around us. So there's this cool flux that can go on, but those data points are exceptionally important because I can't see my blind sides.
Right.
Yeah, I just can't. That's why, it's nice having you around because your situational awareness is a little better than mine. So if I'm going to walk into a car, you can pull me aside and be like, hey, we're there. Yeah. So useful. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Completely agree.
The problem is sometimes the car is proverbial.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly, yeah. But that's what good relationships do, right?
Yeah.
Help us. We just can't see it.
So what's really stopping people from stepping into who they are?
I think it goes back to what we actually have to hold in order to be able to do that. And we have to learn to hold the tension that arises in our experience. And to look at those parts of us, again, it's not easy. It's quite challenging. And when I say acceptance, right, it isn't always, fluffy and magical and joyous and liberating. We have to learn to accept that which is arising that's also uncomfortable. Yeah. You know what I mean? But in there lies the freedom. That's the other thing. On the other side of that is the freedom. So accepting the totality of who we are is difficult. It's a practice. It does not happen overnight. And that's one of the challenges people have, I think. And in particular, the people I work on, their whole identity can be attached on outcome sometimes, right? The salary that they had for a long time, the businesses that they were creating, the merit that they had, the accolades, etc., you name it, that literally, not figuratively, literally formed part of their identity.
Right.
Literally. So you can imagine sometimes how difficult it is and how much dissonance people can go through both here and here when they know at some level it isn't right for them anymore, but there's so much momentum. There's so much inertia, right? And it's hard to step into that place where you actually explore it and learn to let it go because by definition it's painful. But sometimes that, I'm not going to say that's necessarily enough, but holding space for that and allowing the discomfort is a really good place to at least start. But it's difficult. And you have to look at truths you don't want to. Yep. And you have to redefine your whole paradigm. And it's not easy, but it's definitely fulfilling and well worth it. That's the other side of that too. Consistent daily action. I'm not a big believer in quick fix stuff, and hacks and things like this. The deep work is the consistent work that's challenging, but it's without question extremely fruitful. The most beneficial by far, yeah.
So you just spent 3 months side questing in India.
It was part of a bigger 8 to 10 month quest, but yeah, 3 months was India, yeah.
What knowledge did you gain in that 3 months?
Nothing. No, I'm not. I could cite some, things that I learned by studying Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and things like this, but there's maybe some academic knowledge. But I know you're asking a deeper question. And again, it was a process of just letting go and stepping into what was already there. And the ashram was a really beautiful experience because, like you said, and we've talked about, you need data. Yeah. We don't grow in a vacuum. And so a lot of the things I can deal with pretty readily now, which is nice because I can hold it in awareness and it doesn't dysregulate me nearly as much as it used to. So we need that to be able to process our stuff. And at the ashram in particular, I was just bombarded with all sorts of stimuli that brought up these different parts of me that I was actually able to take a really good look at and in some cases completely resolve. So it was beautiful. It was like, that saying, it's like everything I needed, nothing of what I expected. Like that was it to a T. Yeah. I'm doing meditation and yoga and all this other stuff 10 hours a day, but the actual process of interrelating with other people from different backgrounds and different cultures and different histories, and the way I experienced how I came to life in their presence was, I may get a bit emotional, but it was wonderfully liberating because I could bear witness to so much in such a short period of time. And as I said, a lot of that stuff unraveled and just let go, And, you can look at old conditions that I had that would have propelled me to behave or act in a completely different way, 5 or 6 years ago. They just sort of bubbled up. I saw them and just let it go. And sort of that new version of me, whatever you want to call it, I don't want to necessarily make it dualistic, but it held it from a much healthier place. And from there, it was like, wow, I can be okay just as I am in this experience without chasing anything. So, conflict management was great. Ashram, there's, romantic tensions, which were handled very skillfully. There was this general, culture clashes and misunderstandings that were handled really skillfully. And it's not because I'm so great, I was just able to hold it from a different place of awareness. And conditions weren't getting in the way of seeing things as they really were. And gorgeous, really phenomenal experience at the ashram. And then there was stuff that happened after the ashram that was really cool too. Yeah.
So what was your big takeaway from the ashram that you're applying to your everyday life?
Trust the process and keep going. To make that even smaller, trust and keep going. Trust is our inner knowing right here. Yeah. Trust and keep going. Keep coming back to that. And this is a lived experience for me every day, coming back to this and trust and keep going. Trust and keep going. Trust and keep going. Because when we tap into that, it's very clear. When we're connected, we're clear. Yeah. Simple. It's so simple that we often miss it. There's all this stuff in the way. But when we get in tune with that, we just keep going. And there's an expansive quality to that because there's possibility, there's opportunity. And it's not like, for example, we don't feel fear, but we're not afraid to be afraid anymore. Yeah. When anxiety comes up, you can kind of hold it and see through it. So if you're trusting something that's bigger than you and you at the same time, that kind of keeps you moving forward. So yeah, that's the biggest takeaway from that.
Big talking point that you and I frequently share is that the ultimate truth of the universe is shut up and do what you know you should.
Yeah. It's really simple. Yeah. I'm not saying it's simple to the principles are simple. As I told you, before I went, one of the reasons I went on this big hiatus is I've been at this stuff 13 years. It's not new, but I'm a big believer in first principles. What are the practices and principles that are time honored, that have always worked and will always work and currently always work? Yeah. How do we penetrate to principle? That's what my interest is. And that was a big driver for me to go to India and Bali and all the places I've been, is to dive into this as deeply as I can. Because the reality is we can never take people deeper than we've been ourselves. Yeah. Full stop. And also there's a universal harmonizing truth behind some of this stuff. And when I say it and some people listen, they go, yeah, it's not because I'm so special or you're so special. It's a truth that we can converge on because it's not ours. Yeah. But at the same time it is. So really cool stuff, man. Yeah.
When you get involved with a lot of those ancient texts, they're talking about the same stuff that we're talking about now.
Of course. Yeah.
Like these human problems that we think are so complicated and so special are the exact same problems that we've had for 3,000 years. It's just now we have smartphones.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and the more I dig into this, the more I see, like, you know, Zen students back in the day were asking the same delusional, misaligned questions back then as, you know, they are today. And it's just part of the human condition, right? So we're not as, I guess, today's day and age is very unique in a sense, because I think with AI and technology, it's literally unprecedented. Yeah. We have no point of reference in our history to point to for that. You know, that's a different topic altogether. However, yeah, these universal truths are quite punctuating because it's like the reality. So, you know, we can't put that into hacks. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting. And then what I've found so beautiful about, you know, my work is bringing these together, the aspects of, you know, tangible business results, we'll say, and real-time practical applications of this stuff. And it can be done. I do it all the time. It's really nice. Yeah. And it helps people a lot. Helps them work, helps them life, helps them business, helps them with their teams, helps them make better decisions, helps them make transitions, helps them start new ventures, whatever it is, because it's coming from a deeper place. Yeah. So it's a river that we draw wisdom from, that we drink from, that just replenishes all the time if we're willing to go there. This really just, honestly, like this, I'm being sincere, this just feels like a conversation.
That's
like, I don't feel like it, you know, A, like this is not uncommon ground for us, but B, it's kind of cool because it's like, this is it.
This is what we talk about.
I'm not putting on a show and stuff, and this is so it's kind of cool because I think, you know, I used to do episodes and stuff, you know, years ago, and you know, I would actually practice in advance, and so I didn't do any of that. We did this like 30 minutes ago. You know, I know what questions you're going to ask me, so it's kind of cool, right? There's this like a process of allowing it to come through you. Side note, but yeah, interesting. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, hell yeah. And that's why also I tried to prep you with a little bit last night. Like, look, man, this is not going to be anything out of your realm. Like, you're already ready. Yeah. So I've got one here that
Hit me.
Hit me with your best shot. Fire away. Yeah. What would you say to someone who feels that the only way forward is to hustle harder?
It really depends on the person. I don't want to make generic statements, because you have to feel into their experience and what their drivers are. Right, and you have to calibrate into the presence of another human being to see where it's coming from. So I don't know if I'd necessarily say anything, to be honest. Maybe I just hold space for them, listen, see how I can help. I'm not trying to dance around the question, but sometimes I don't like to be too prescriptive because so many situations are so unique. And I think we have to respond to people as things arise in our experience. In general, however, you just have to look at what's really driving you. And some people know and some people don't. And those who have an inkling that what's driving them maybe isn't the healthiest for them, my only piece of advice or maybe encouragement would just explore it. If there's a little part of you that's whispering that you can hear but you're not listening to, there's a reason that it's whispering. There's a reason something is alive. There's a reason there's a bit of dissonance, or there's not a lot of coherence in your experience day to day. And at the end of the day, we're the only ones who can step into that space of exploration. Right. And this is where sometimes I find, maybe generic advice a little troublesome because everybody's situation and context and background is so unique. And ultimately, it's their truth that has to come up and shine through them. So that would be my advice, is explore that. But what does that look like to you? And maybe if you can take a little bit of a risk, listen a little bit more because you're hearing. And that's always the first step.
If there's someone who's stuck right now and can't seem to find a way out, what would you tell that person?
Well, I think our angst is our liberation. So I always like to see, it's certainly been in my case and everyone I've worked with, that the stuck point is actually our passageway through. That stuck point, there's something deeper going on there. And it's in the realm of your capacity to explore it if you recognize that you're stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's information, it's data. The body's communicating something with you. And so again, there's different methods that you can go, different strategies or techniques or things, people you can talk to. But part of it's trusting what's already there.
Yeah.
Not doing necessarily anything new or anything additionally. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be I'm trying to be as practical as I can, but it's true. It's really that simple sometimes. And the process of trusting and allowing that deeper stuckness to sort of take form so you can understand it a little better will help you find what you need to do in order to absolve it or resolve it or understand it. Could be in the form of a YouTube video that just hits it right on point. Could be an Instagram reel, could be a conversation, could be a walk on the beach. As long as you're holding it in your awareness and allowing it to come up. Yeah. You know, the path forward will present itself. So stick with it. And give yourself, I guess, permission to be okay not being okay. Yeah. That's the other thing too. We can sometimes shoot 2 arrows at a problem. The first arrow is I don't feel okay, I'm stuck. I'm burning out. And then, well, what do? We go to old habit patterns and we try to hide and deal with it by maybe hustling more or continuing on that same path or doing the stuff that's familiar. Yeah. It's not right or wrong, but the body and the unconscious and the conscious does what's familiar. It gravitates towards what's familiar. And sometimes all we need to do is allow that part of us to breathe a little bit and not try to compound the problem by saying it's something that necessarily needs to be fixed. Yeah. If there's anxiety, sometimes it doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be felt and heard and seen. You know, we don't need 15 programs to look at it all the time. It's just something that we have to allow. So that would be the other thing is, to the best of our ability in our current level of understanding and paradigm is not add additional tension to what's already there. Yeah, because part of the reason that tension is there is because we're not allowing it to unfold. So my fist is stuck and there's the tension, and if it restricts our ability to navigate too. And if I put my hand on top, it's like, yeah. So that's what I'd say to that, yeah.
This is some of the worst advice that I could give other people, but it works really well for me.
Yeah.
And when I have something that I have to do, and I have such an extreme resistance to it that I can't seem to like get in and do whatever it may be, I go do anything else, everything else. I always have a mental to-do list that's this long, and it seems so counterintuitive. If I have one task that I've got some mental resistance to, so I go focus on 10 other things.
Yeah.
But typically, by the time I get done with those other things, I'm ready to tackle that one thing.
Yeah. And that's a very practical strategy too. We can look at, like, for example, if somebody's stuck in task orientation, what I do, and sometimes, you know, what I advise people is, well, start to do something. Yeah. Titrate, bring it down to really manageable, small, conceivable steps. That's the rational approach, which is useful, but there's also the embodied approach where we have to regulate the body. Because sometimes people are very dysregulated and they get beyond what's called the range of tolerance.
Right.
Yeah. And when they're there, it's the nervous system's not operating in a place that's able to focus and get things done. I'm just trying to keep the word simple. So we have to regulate and come down and relax a little bit, you know. And this is really important too that people miss. So sometimes it's like, if I've in the past tried to use too many tools, it was like, again, that same problem.
Yeah.
Adding more problems, just compounding issues. When sometimes I just need to regulate and be still in my experience to allow those stuck emotions and tension just to dissipate a little bit, so I can get more freedom to actually move into something and start to push things forward, if you will. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So from your own story, a big part of the reason that you got into coaching was taking control of your health.
Yeah, huge.
What happened there?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a backstory to that. What I think, you know, to make it succinct, is I got really physically ill in my early 20s, and I do mean ill, very incapacitated. There's a bunch of diagnoses that I got, which I won't even repeat here because you know, I turned to alternative approaches to deal with it. And when I got into wellness at the time, you know, I was 23, it was out of necessity. I was desperate. It wasn't curious for me. It wasn't necessarily interesting. It wasn't something that I'd seen on YouTube or some Netflix show and polarized me in that direction because it felt good. I really had a difficult time, extremely difficult time day to day. And it brought out the worst in me in many aspects, being in that much pain, being that insecure, being that incapacitated. And all I could do some days literally was sit with the discomfort. Yeah. That's the only power some days I had, was to sit with what was arising and be aware of it. And literally the thought of being in that condition with all, the stiffness and the pain and the fatigue the rest of my life was so overwhelming that, I trained myself to come back to now. And it wasn't poetic, power of now stuff. It was that thought is so unbelievably overwhelming, and it puts 15 hands on top of that fist analogy that I'm just going to step into and observe what's arising. So I learned, even before I understood, my professional field of work now and dove in deeper with a lot of my mentors and teachers in my trainings, I had to internalize that way of operating out of necessity. And I started to heal myself later when I understood the power of the mind and the body and what it's really capable of and how brilliant and sophisticated the mind-body is. And as I learned about the power of suppressed emotions and stuck points in the body and how it creates physical symptoms and ailments and psychological issues too, I started to slowly recover. Yeah. And there were some really pivotal points in that recovery journey, because I had my doubts along the path as well, that really hammered that home to me. And gradually, I started to work with other people, just like from my heart, and people would be in pain or they'd be going through difficult challenges, and I would work through them with some of these processes, and I wasn't charging them, I just wanted to help. And I literally witnessed some miracles, man. Like, to this day, very, very inspiring transformations of people who were able to reverse years and years of problems by stepping into this truth that, well, the mind and body is one, and there's a lot more going on than we realize. Right. Long story short. And so I was never drawn into this work consciously. I mean, my background is science and engineering, 8 years. I mean, what am I doing in this field, right? It was never a conscious draw. And when I came to Asia and I made all my pivotal decisions, they always came from a much deeper place, an intuitive place, an inner knowing. So my decision to come to Asia many years ago now, maybe 8 years ago now, I was confused one day, trying to figure out what to do. What do I got to do? I got a master's in engineering, and I was offered a PhD, and I could do all this stuff. And I was asking everybody around me what the right answer was. Can you give me the map for my life? Right. Can you give me the map for my life? And I went upstairs to the Dharma hall, meditation hall. I'll never forget it. I must have sat 10 hours, a couple bathroom breaks, but towards the end, there was this overwhelming rush of clarity, which is like, you got to go to Asia. That was it. That was it.
That was it.
That was it. It wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't gray. It was as clear as you sitting right here. And that was it. It came from such a deep place. Again, those experiences that we talk about where we transition into something new, that I had to listen. I had to listen. And it didn't feel like it was like a lot of pressure. It didn't feel like it was forced. I just knew that was my truth. Yeah. So 2 months later, did the classic, got rid of my job, got rid of my apartment, booked a one-way ticket. And ever since then, basically, I've had a multitude of very challenging experiences along the way that have helped refine myself and my own way of relating in the world. And my career just unfolds. People need help. And I, to be honest, this has been the other interesting thing I just want to be very transparent about, is that's also facilitated my growth and transcendence a lot. Working with people shows you your blind sides. Yep. Relationships show you your blind sides. And I used to think, when I stood in front of a group of people, that I actually knew something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like literally, I have this little chip on my shoulder, like, I know something, ha ha ha. Yeah. These days, I really don't know shit. Yep. And it's because this stuff I'm talking about, when people step into their truth, it's not mine, it's not theirs, it's not academic, it's something that they can learn to step into. Right. You know what I mean? And then you're not really teaching anymore. I don't really know anything because I can never fully relate to the experience of another human being 100%. Yeah. right? I mean, I can do the best through my own lived experience and the space we share. But it's been incredibly humbling too to see, even when I wasn't at my best, which has been a lot throughout my career, I was still showing up to help others. And I'll be the first to admit I wasn't, there's some areas in my life where I was very refined in and really clear about, and there was other areas that I was super ignorant in, and had I didn't realize how ignorant I was in those areas until I had to work through it, and it was pointed out in some cases, right? But it pulls me forward. It's what it feels like.
Right.
And it's both pulling and coming from somewhere that feels right and congruent. Happy to talk more about some of those stories, but it's been just a colorful journey, man. Yeah. Colorful. Yeah, very colorful. Yeah. So pain got me into it. Love keeps me going. Yeah. And the deep conviction that this experience, this way of living is available to anyone with a nervous system when they're ready. Yeah. And the key is when they're ready. And everybody's on a different clock. Everybody's different experience, but I've just witnessed too many deep transformations in my own life and those of the people around me that I have zero doubt now. Zero. When people are ready, yeah, they'll step into their lives, man.
I don't think that we could put a nicer bow on it than that, Brad. I think that's a perfect time and place to call it.
Sure.
Brad, thanks so much for coming on and talking with me today.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And for people who want to connect with you, what's the best place to do that?
Find me on my Instagram, which is repurpose.u.
Okay.
And I think you'll put that in the thing. Okay. And from there on my Instagram, you can find a link to my website and some of my resources and some of the courses I have and all that Linktree stuff. So I think that would be the best channel to funnel people into. Yeah.
And there will be links in the comment section below. If you find that you're constantly wrapped up in your own mind trying to problem solve endlessly, I have a free worksheet to help go from overthinking to over problem solving. Click my link below, just go to my website, enter your email, and it'll be sent to you automatically, along with some occasional newsletters with tips on how to calm your mind, get into the body, and stop overthinking.